Hi everyone. I'm going to be talking to you today about fish meal, but not in a fish and chips kind of way, but as in what fish eat. When I started my Nuffield, when I applied for my Nuffield, I was working as part of the farming and fisheries team at Co-op. And this is a fantastic experience, and it really allowed me to cultivate my passion for aquaculture and got me really interested in this topic of feed. I had a conversation with a previous Nuffield scholar who suggested that I might want to think about applying for a Nuffield scholarship. I didn't actually know what that was at the time, sorry. But after doing a bit of Googling and talking to people, it sounded like a great idea to explore this topic. So I'm going to be talking to you about feed from an aquaculture perspective, but really it's just livestock. So whether it swims or it's on land, it's pretty much the same thing. So if you're a livestock farm in the room or you're someone that produces a feed ingredient, then hopefully there'll be something interesting in this talk for you, or come and have a chat later. Scottish salmon is the UK's biggest food export, and it's a really popular product in this country as well. But as well as salmon, we import a lot of seafood species like prawns and sea bass, and they're all reliant on feed ingredients. So what is in feed? There's up to 50 different ingredients that goes into a salmon pellet, and some of those will be plant-based ingredients like soy, corn, wheat, marine ingredients like fish meal and fish oil, some land animal proteins like blood meal and feather meal in some feed pellets, micro-ingredients, and then increasingly now, I'm sure you've all heard of alternative or novel ingredients like insects, algae, and single-cell proteins that are going into feed as well. These feed ingredients are sourced from all over the world and traded as commodities. If you want to learn more about commodity trading, then go and speak to Ian Tremaine. He's got a great card game. It might be a good Christmas present if some of you are thinking about that already. So the makeup of feed ingredients in salmon has changed quite a lot over time. If you look back at the 90s, then most of the ingredients going into salmon feed were fish meal and fish oil, marine-based, by 85%. But if you look across to what's happening today, that's gone down to about 25% inclusion. But despite this, the vast majority of NGO and media attention is on the negative impacts of marine ingredients like overfishing, human rights, and more increasingly now, I'm sure you're all very aware of this, focuses on South American soy, so deforestation and land conversion in Brazilian soy supply chains in particular. And I really wanted to understand the hype behind this as a retailer, and also whether or not there were other ingredients within those 50 in the feed basket that I should also be worried about. Up to 90% of environmental impacts of fish farming is through feed. And if you're a retailer, more importantly perhaps, feed is also a really big contributor to the cost of farmed fish. And lots of retailers, Tesco, Co-op, every retailer in the UK has set really ambitious Scope 3 carbon emissions targets that's going to need everyone in the supply chain to work together to try and meet those. And as well as carbon, there'll be asks on biodiversity, on people, and these asks are coming from retailers, they're coming through policy, and we need to try and work together as a supply chain to understand how we're going to meet those. I didn't really understand supply chains very well, I don't think, and didn't really know how we were going to do this. So I was really keen to get out there and just learn a little bit more through my Nuffield. So last year I set off and visited 6 countries. I'm going to talk about 3 areas in this talk, so a bit about Norway, Southeast Asia, and Brazil. I'm quite lucky with my job, and I do get to travel a fair bit. But when you travel as a retailer, I think people talk to you in a certain way. So I was quite keen to get out there and kind of have these conversations and see these things without my retailer hat on. So the first place I visited was Norway. Norway's the home of salmon farming. It's the biggest salmon producer in the world, and they've got a really progressive approach to salmon farming, but also to feed. So I spent a few days hanging out on salmon farms and on boats, which wasn't a chore. Like, look at it, it's great. And they are risk assessing every ingredient within the feed basket. So not just marine ingredients and soy, but they had this really holistic approach. And not only that, they're identifying where the risk is and then proactively engaging with those feed supply chains to try and come up with solutions, which is a really good lesson, I think, for the industry in the UK. As well as salmon farmers, I also visited a marine ingredient producer, and they were using fish that was third-party certified. It was coming from well-managed fisheries, fully traceable to boat level, and also making use of waste products or byproducts. And again, that's a really good lesson that we can learn across all feed ingredients. And these are some principles that I think we need to be thinking about more in Scottish salmon. Next, I headed to Southeast Asia. Most farmed fish in the world is produced on the Asian continent, like nearly 90%. So I had to go there and find out what was going on. There's everything from huge industrial scale shrimp feed mills all the way through to lots of backyard aquaculture systems. I visited a really interesting centre that was testing alternative ingredients, and also visited insect farms, algae producers, single-cell proteins. And these types of ingredients can be really low impact in terms of their environmental footprint, but we also need to make sure that we're demonstrating those low environmental impacts as well. I had a really good day when I hired a bike and did a bit of a trip around one of the islands in the Gulf of Thailand. I'm not just bragging. I do have a point. There's some, lots of ingredients coming from that area, but also lots of farms. So I visited this small scale, like backyard grouper farm. On the right, there's the farmers there. And they were growing every single feed ingredient on the farm itself, apart from marine ingredients and soy, which were being imported. And I found that really interesting. And there's a really good reason why they were still importing marine ingredients and soy. And it's because they're really good ingredients. So they do get a lot of stick, but we have to make sure that when we're looking at sustainability of feed, that we prioritise fish nutrition and welfare, and they have to be kept front and centre when we're talking about sustainability. The main reason that I wanted to do a Nuffield was to visit Brazil, and I found it quite hard in these first few trips to shake off my retailer hat until I got to Brazil. And this was the trip for me that was really the best part of my Nuffield experience. And I think a lot of that was due to Nuffield Brazil and some of the scholars that I met. I did a road trip for a few days with Mauro on the left. He's a 2016 Nuffield Brazil scholar. And we went through, in the south of Brazil, through Parana State, visiting fish farmers and visiting feed companies and feed ingredient producers. And one of the things that we visited, one of the places, was a cooperative in Parana State called Copacal. And within this cooperative, they have grain farmers, tilapia farmers, and chicken farmers, actually, and retail outlets, all under the same cooperative. So if you're a tilapia farmer in the south of Brazil, you can just walk down the road and go and see your friend who's growing your corn or your soy that's going into the feed. And that is hugely contrasting with the situation that we've currently got in Scottish salmon, where we're importing these ingredients from all over the world, and a lot of them can only be traced back to country level. And this was a really, really good example that I think we can learn from about local sourcing. The main thing that I wanted to see in Brazil, and the reason why I wanted to go, was that I really wanted to go and see a soy farm because of all this, all the things that I'd seen in the media. So we went to visit a current Nuffield scholar, Vanessa, whose farm is in Mato Grosso, and spent the morning going out looking at the soy being planted and learning about third-party certification scheme that they're working towards. They've got examples of agroforestry, and they've got really good scheme for workers on farm, so really good examples of good practice. But we also had some great conversations about the challenges with traceability in South American soy, and from a retail perspective, that's what's really difficult, is it's very hard to see if you're sourcing from farms that are carrying out good practice or not. In the afternoon, we went over to see the beef herd, and they're kept on feedlots, and I'd never been to see that kind of system before. But they yeah, they have this feedlot with the soy farm, huge farm, and they're managed by cowboys, like actual cowboys. And I've grown up horse riding, so I was really, really excited when they brought the horses over and said that we could have a go. So spent a bit of time kind of galloping around the farm, and I suddenly had this awful realisation that I was actually having a really nice time. And that wasn't really meant to happen. If someone had told me like a few years ago that I'd be on a soy and beef farm in Brazil and having a lovely time, I would have been absolutely horrified. And I think some of my 2021 group can pay testament to that. They've heard me talk about it. So, yeah, I think it was just a good learning for me that, I kind of got why you might want to be a beef farmer and a soy farmer in Brazil. And it was a really good experience going to see that in person that I wouldn't have got without Nuffield. While I was going around on my travels, I did some semi-structured interviews, and one of the questions I asked people was, okay, in 5 years' time, what do we need to do to have more sustainable feed? And most people said finding alternative ingredients, sustainable alternative ingredients. And that is true, but really we're just going to need more sustainable feed ingredients, full stop. Whether or not that's an alternative ingredient or a traditional ingredient, I think the pressure is coming to demonstrate that these ingredients are sustainable. I've got into the habit of asking people to see their feed tickets, and this is one I got from a trout farm up in Scotland, if anyone wants to see it later. And some of the ingredients on the ingredients list, we've got fish meal, horse beans, guar protein. We need to know where these ingredients have come from, how they've been produced, and what their environmental impact is, if we're going to have any chance of understanding our overall environmental footprint of aquaculture or any kind of livestock system. So just in terms of takeaways, we need to prioritise feed traceability. We need to prove and improve ingredients. Certification and data can help with that. And also, as retailers and the whole supply chain, we need to support and invest in supply chains. I'm just going to leave you with a quote that I heard at the Boston Seafood Show earlier this year. And this guy said, "Don't ask me why my seafood is so expensive, ask why theirs is so cheap." And that sums up this topic for me, is that we really need to invest in supply chains. If we don't have responsible feed supply chains, then who is paying the price for that in the supply chain? I just want to say thank you again to the Richard Laws Foundation and for Nuffield for giving me this opportunity. Thanks, everyone.